Welcome to the Hollywood Outsider, an award-winning weekly entertainment podcast. In this episode, we have a news roundup before we discuss a few recent films like Space Jam 2, Gunpowder, Milkshake, and the Fear Street Trilogy. And our topic this week is, what is scarier to you, psychological horror or the gore factor? Let's get on with the show. My name is Aaron Peterson. Joining me today are my fellow host, Amanda Sink.
Hello, hello.
And... do you remember Amanda? I don't remember his name. What's this guy's name?
Oh my God, did we forget to put it on the format?
And Bull Shannon. Welcome back, Bull Shannon.
Okay.
This is actually not too bad right off the cuff. John Davenport, welcome back, sir. You haven't been here in a while for those that are new to the show.
Yeah, I've got a whole new seat and I got a whole new recording place and a whole new everything that I'm looking at, and I don't like it. How about you guys?
Buy new stuff.
Did I miss anything?
Do you got an IKEA near you?
No, I have literally nothing near me. There's like deer and then turkeys and then nothing for miles and miles.
Including movie theaters, apparently.
I've been watching a lot of Alone. You can go kill a deer, stuff it, sit on it, bam, new chair.
Yeah, but my dad gets really upset when you threaten his deer. So, because they all got personalities and he names them and it's just weird.
So this weirdness is genetic.
Dinner, lunch, breakfast. Is that how he names them, or does he give them like a real personality?
Like one of his hobbies is to go out and re-nail up his no hunting signs.
He just takes them down when he's hungry. I get it.
You're right.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, welcome back. What's happened since you were gone? Amanda, anything happened since he was gone?
Oh, we did find a replacement for you, but then you decided to stay, so...
So it's going to be really awkward next week when he tries to come back.
So I don't actually have to be here right now?
I think you're contractually obligated because you renewed. You shouldn't have signed the dotted line for the renewal.
I'm glad you clarified that because it sounded like you said that I was nude, and I'm like, well...
Are you?
Don't
tell us.
You got us one. I'm really curious at this point.
I might be Winnie the Poohing it right now. You never know.
It's going to be really awkward if this is the Podcast Awards episode that they listen to.
That's fine. They'll get a good little laugh out of it. And then they'll go Facebook, John Davenport.
Yeah. You know what she meant? She was pretty on the nose. You know what I'm saying? Like, boom. She's going to go look up John Davenport on the Facebook. Then you can get the picture of that little endeavor.
Right. And it hangs to the left a little bit too.
Oh my God. Okay.
For some women, that's perfect.
What, crooked woman? Maybe a bent woman?
Not everyone's,
Hey. It's not that kind of podcast. I don't think, unless you're going to give me tips. I'm listening to tips. Wait.
Okay.
Stop it.
Like
John?
Just the tip?
We're not, I was going to say, are we going to get into this?
This is
just the tip?
This is how you lose awards. I promise you. This is the kind of thing that cost Mark Wahlberg the Oscar.
Oh, this is it.
It was like this and say hello to your mother for me.
Well, you know what? We haven't done this in a while. So we're going to do our news roundup, which is all the exciting stuff that's happened over the last week. And huge news, the Walking Dead lawsuit with Frank Darabont, who sued AMC, finally settled that for like $200 million. So, bam! He was apparently in the right. But it's a settlement, so they're not acknowledging that he was right. But $200 million feels like a pretty solid acknowledgement. Also, Loki Season 2, we are getting a second one. So if you enjoyed Loki Season 1, you will get more of that insanity. If you didn't enjoy it, it doesn't matter. You still have to watch it because that's what Marvel says. If you want to watch their movies and their TV shows, you have to watch them all or you don't understand any of them. Right? Am I understanding that correctly?
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Netflix is getting into the games business. They are basically looking at streaming games. Right now, it's just going to be mobile games, but they're looking at other games in the future. Wheel of Time, which is a huge novel series, is developing a movie on top of the TV series, which is already filming season 2. None of this stuff's come out yet, but apparently they are just banking on this being the next Game of Thrones. Kevin Smith confirmed that Clerks 3 is a go with Lionsgate distributing, so we are getting more Clerks and more Kevin Smith films. Think of that what you may at this point. The National Association for Theater Owners put Disney on blast over the perceived lost repeat business for Black Widow due to their premiere access, which they are implying also resulted in a lot of piracy. CNN is getting a streaming service, so I guess they can stream the same 3 stories every single day, all day, I guess. somewhere else as opposed to just their channel. Robert Downey Jr. is coming to HBO in a show called The Sympathizer, which is a thriller about a half-French, half-Vietnamese communist spy in the final days of the Vietnam War. Downey's going to play his friend. Red Rum is a new series coming about two true crime podcasters who become the target of the serial killer they're covering, which is something that I think everybody who loves true crime podcasts have wondered when that would happen forever.
Yeah, that's the big show right there.
Exactly. Like,
we made it. We got our own serial killer, and he's chasing us.
That's the
great.
Best podcast ever. Jon Stewart's coming back to TV with an Apple Plus series, and I found out this past week, Clark Gregg wrote What Lies Beneath, the Harrison Ford movie. I had no idea. I never knew that. So Agent Phil Coulson wrote What Lies Beneath, which is a great movie, and Harrison Ford starred in it, and Robert Zemeckis directed it. You should check it out. There you go. Of all of that, what really tickled your fancy, Mr. Davenport?
I gotta say, this whole Netflix doing games thing is kind of like the Gaming Outsider doing movies.
That shade.
Things that they get into that they probably shouldn't.
Did you just throw shade like publicly? I like this. I missed you, John.
That's all. But see, that's love shade because Scott knows I love him. Like, if you did it, it'd be a different story entirely. But
That's true.
Seeing how I did it,
that's true.
Spot on.
That's true.
I do have a cute video of John on Scott's back or Scott on John's back running
Scott
around
was on my
in the movie
back.
theater. Yeah, it was really cute.
Because he was dressed up like Mario, so I just had him jump on my back like I was Yoshi and ran him into the movie theater.
It was adorable.
This is the weirdest conversation
BFFs.
we've had in a long time. So why does that speak to you? Because we have Game Pass, which is basically Xbox version of Netflix for games, and now Netflix is going to get in the Xbox Game Pass business, I guess.
Well, like every gaming system, I think, has its own thing where you can get some sort of pass of all sorts of free games, and I don't know why Netflix would want to get into that sort of industry, because it's just something else where you're going to, either A, you'll be spreading yourself way too thin on, or B, people would just look for any sort of reason to complain about it. But I think it's good for them in the long run because it will increase what they're able to produce and give people. So it'll be fun to watch that interactivity grow, because it seems like they're really interested in building up that whole interactive show or movie side, and that's where I guess this will come in more prevalent.
Global domination, basically.
Yeah, they want to be the Disney of
Disney?
streaming services.
Yeah. For Netflix getting into games, I guess it's not anything that's too surprising for me. It's one of those things where if you want to be competitive, you have to find a new edge. And streaming for television and movies is no longer the competitive edge for Netflix anymore. I mean, I'm not saying that they're well established in their realm, but they have much more competition than they used to. So now they have to be a little bit more forward thinking and what can they do next to stay part of the game long term and also acquire some additional property and revenue. And so when they have that expansion of assets, then ideally they can do more, satisfy more customers, and make more money.
I mean, it's pretty exciting for them. I mean, they want to be a one-stop shop. That's their dream. They want to be a one-stop streaming shop. I get that. I think that's perfectly fine. And it's just a matter of, will the games be competitive with what Xbox and PlayStation and whatnot? And I guess Nintendo, but I don't have one of those, so I don't really care. It's all about me. But good for them. I'm excited to see where that goes. We should mention also Manifest. For Manifest fans, there apparently is a deal they're trying to negotiate. Either Warner Brothers, which produces Manifest, is working out a deal with either NBC or Netflix to bring another season back because it's been such a huge hit on Netflix. So there's a chance you might see more Manifest after all. Who knew?
My exciting piece is about the Wheel of Time. Not that I know too much about it, but in investigating what the novel series is about and some of the names attached to the series, it sounds really promising. Rosamund Pike definitely makes me think that there's going to be a crazy element to the story. I don't know if you guys get that feeling every time you see her face now after Gone Girl.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when Kane Hodder shows up, you're like, oh, killer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
3 people understood that reference, but I like all of you.
So, I mean, it sounds interesting. It's weird that they already have the second season filming before they've even released the first season. I feel like that's really weird, but it also must mean that they see some promise in it somehow. So,
yeah, I mean, to me, I get leery every time a studio does this, because how many times has it worked to get ahead of the cart, the cart before the horse? Is that the saying? To get the cart before the horse, because you've got all this anticipation that this is going to be a fantastic thing and it's going to take off and it's going to be phenomenal. And you're expecting a Game of Thrones, but you know what? Game of Thrones only reached its juggernaut status after 3-4 years minimum, really, after at least the second year before it really started catching fire. It was just kind of popular, and then it just blew up. So you're banking on this becoming the same kind of phenomenon, and you have no idea. And it's so hard to predict that. I mean, look at how many other properties have tried to start a franchise, and then they just whiff out. Divergence, the Universal Monsters, anything DC. It's just like, most of them just whiff out. Marvel did it. Marvel did it great. Has anybody else really done it? I don't think so. And you can't even throw Game of Thrones in there yet because they haven't done anything but their show yet. So, I don't know. That's a little leery to me. Makes me nervous whenever it doesn't cost me anything. But on the same token, it just feels like a waste of investment if it doesn't work.
Yeah, I was about to say that the fact that the Wheel of Time series is just such a huge juggernaut as far as the fantasy novel is concerned. There's people who I would have never imagined being fantasy readers who love that series. So I was about to say, like, hey, it's got a huge following, so it's likely to be something big. But then you went ahead and said DC can't seem to get its its footing underneath it. So I was like, oh right, that's also got a huge following, but yet somehow it keeps on tripping up on itself.
It sure does. I'm really excited about the Walking Dead lawsuit. I think it's great for Frank Darabont. For whatever reason, he was the creator of that show, and they kind of jilted him out of millions. And, I mean, millionaires fighting over millions, sure. But he's also the guy that created that, and it became a juggernaut. And they kind of kicked him to the curb, and it was really kind of cold. It seemed like, obviously, from the outside. So I'm glad there's a little bit of retribution there. I mean, they've been fighting this forever, and they finally just settled right before the show ends, which I don't know why. It must be because, like, once the show ends, then you've got a real accounting of how much money they made. And they're like, oh, shit, we got $200 million? Good. Let's just make that deal.
Yeah, well, I also like to see it when the creator of something gets their just desserts, especially when it's something that turns into this massive juggernaut. And creatives out there are so few and far between, even though we all are so used to seeing so much that is creative productions and stuff. But to see somebody actually win against a company is pretty it feels good.
It does. It gives us hope. I don't know what it's hope for, but let's just hope that we create something and we can sue a company and win later, I guess. Yeah.
Or maybe let's just hope that we get brought in as part of the creative process.
I want the money, Amanda. I am totally willing to sell out at this juncture in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw scruples.
Exactly. Just write me the check and we are good to go. Speaking of, Kevin Smith got a check. Now, this is one where we've kind of debated over the years, especially John and I. So if you are very new to the show, then here's the debate. I say Kevin Smith hasn't been able to, and I have loved Kevin Smith for many years. I still love him as a person. His documentary that's coming out called Clerk is great. You should find it because it's a great tribute to the man and what he's done and transforming his career. But in terms of him doing films, he hasn't done a quality film in a long time, in my opinion. John, though, still loves the guy. Where do you stand on Clerks 3 in terms of filmmaking? Where do you stand in terms of Clerks 3? Are you excited for this? Are you hopeful for a return? Did Jay and Silent Bob reboot make you question if he should go back to the well? Where are you at on this?
That's a hard question. I know I've been very vocal for my love and appreciation for Kevin Smith, but life has taught me that, you know what, maybe it's time to move on.
Whoa, that's a big swing from where you were previously.
Yeah. It's fine. Kevin Smith he's got the He-Man thing coming out in a couple of days. That's going to be great. I hope. If he wants to keep on doing smaller things like this to keep himself going, that's perfectly fine. I think he's also come out as admitting that maybe ever since he's really appreciated weed way too much, that his quality has gone down the tubes, which we're all like, duh. But yeah, I'm really pretty much. Huh?
Pretty much, yeah. I watched that's in that Clerks documentary. I don't think it's out yet, but whenever it comes out, he does kind of admit to that, or he says that it definitely equates to that time period. And I'm just sitting there as a fan going, yeah, everybody knows that, man. Well, you're just now picking that up. Yeah, I love the Clerks series. I love Clerks 2. I know some people hate it. I love Clerks 2. I think it's hysterical. And Clerks 1 is just a timeless classic. It's one of those 90s movies that really kind of reinvented cinema in a lot of ways. There's Tarantino-esque, there's Kevin Smith-esque for that time period, because he really kind of had his own little subgenre, which spun off into 1,000 little films that none of them were as good as Clerks. But it created a whole different kind of subgenre. So I'll always respect Kevin Smith. On the same token, their reboot wasn't good, and I really love Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. So I don't know if he can get it back, but I'm hoping, because he's so passionate and loves the Clerks world, that it's going to be a little more special than the reboot.
Right. Well, I hope so, just because he is, when it comes to entertainment and creativity, he is such a supportive force out there for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I want to see him win because of that, but at the same time, I'm tired.
It always makes me kind of sad, because he was such a clever writer. He wrote so well, and then I don't know what happened. He just got obsessed with just dick jokes and weed jokes, and that's literally all he started telling. And it took away from a lot of his sharp wit.
Right.
And I know he still has it, because if you hear him talk or present, he still has it. I just think maybe the weed makes it harder for him to write it. I don't know.
Well, or he's just doing his taste has changed in what he wants to do. Like, he was very successful earlier on in his career, and it was after success after success after success in like around 2012-ish or something that things really started to change for him. So it may have just been like one of those things where he gets all of the great workings out of the way, and then he's like, let me just do stuff that makes me laugh and, isn't as thoughtful and what we would consider worthwhile. But to him, he's enjoying it, so he's just going to put it out there, and, it's somehow a lot of that stuff has been made, because I am on Aaron's board, where I feel like he's really gone downhill as a writer and director over the past, I don't know, roughly 10 years. So before that, I would say that that's like a completely different Kevin Smith than the one we've had over the past decade.
Yeah, he didn't have a dealer then.
I don't know.
It's Seth Rogen's fault.
Yeah, everything is Seth Rogen's fault if it comes to weed.
It's gotta be. Seriously. I mean, even his movies, I used to like him more as a writer, but then every movie he did, it's all about weed. I'm like, there's other stories, man. Can your characters have some other attribute? Damn. Just damn. Hey, remember, you can always find more information at thehollywoodoutsiders.com. That's our website. Join our Facebook group, which is The Hollywood Outsider. It's a private group, so you got to look for it. And we're on Twitter at @BuyPopcorn. Also, we've got a new interview that should be in your podcast feeds with Nicholas Simon, who runs Indochina Productions, which is a line producer that has worked with the Avengers film productions, Kong Skull Island, The Five Bloods. A lot of information is in that interview, and he kind of talks about what a line producer does, which is very cool. It's just an aspect of filmmaking a lot of people don't even realize. Also, if you want to support our show, we are independently funded. We got no money. We don't have Dax Shepard money. We don't have that Spotify deal yet. Therefore, all the expenses are from our own pockets, and Patreon helps fans support their favorite podcast. So if you want to help us, go to Patreon, patreon.com/The Hollywood Outsider. That's patreon.com/The Hollywood Outsider. There's different tiers. We have bonus content for anybody at the $3 and up tier, including Bad Movie Night, which we're doing. Point Break should be coming out sometime soon. And that's a 30-year anniversary of one of the something films of all time.
Something is a great
Dark Side
summarization. Yeah.
Something. All right. Well, we got a few spoiler-free reviews, so let's get into them, and then we'll get to our topic for the week. Man, Gunpowder Milkshake. We were going to review it for the last episode because Amanda actually screened it early. Her review was up on the site. You can still find it there. But unfortunately, because of embargo dates, we couldn't get the episode out when we wanted and also do the review, so we're going to do it now. In her turbulent life as a professional assassin, Scarlet was cruelly forced to abandon her daughter Sam and go on the run. Years later, despite the estrangement, Sam has also grown up into a cold-blooded hitwoman. After a high-stake mission spins out of control, putting an innocent 8-year-old in the middle of a gang war that she has unleashed, Sam has no choice but to go rogue, which ultimately leads her back to her mother and her former hitwomen sidekicks, who all join forces in an avenging war against those who took everything from them. To me, this is very much a cross between a Kill Bill, Kingsman, and God, what else? John Wick, obviously. So
John Wick.
John Chick. We'll call it John Chicks.
Sure.
What do you think of the story here, Amanda? I mean, you felt very passionately about the story in your review, which was to say you hated it.
Yeah, it was just rough. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the concept of where this could have gone. It was more so the dialogue from the script where it was like, all right, man, we get it. The books are a euphemism for guns that are inside of the books. Spoiler alert, I guess? Question mark? They tell you in the beginning, and it's just like a running joke throughout the entire thing. There's also just moments where characters will say things, and I don't know, I feel like it's so forced and unusual for someone to speak in that way. And additionally, the character moments that are supposed to be significant, I don't feel as a viewer I really ever got the true buy-in to that moment. They never developed it well enough and built up to those moments. I will preface this by saying apparently I am in the minority from some of the other things that I've seen of people who really enjoyed it and had a great time with it. And I saw it
too. John saw it too.
Did you enjoy it?
I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, it's kind of fun. I mean, it reminded me. Here's the feeling I had. Now, it's gonna be very rare that most people even understand this reference. But did you ever see the movie The Big Hit? Anybody? Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The vibe was very much The Big Hit, which was, it was very big hit and miss. Like some of the stuff really connected and some of the stuff was like, oh. Story-wise, I mean, it felt like totally a Kingsman John Wick crossover because, I mean, there's a library that's like the Continental. I mean, right? That's pretty much what the library is. You got these whole rogue assassins that are basically conducting hits with the secret organization. Same thing. So it's very John Wickish, but there's also a lot of the action felt very absurd and over the top, which reminded me a lot of Kingsman. So that's kind of where I got that vibe. And the story, it was fine. John, did you like this? Then we're just on the story part. Did you like the story, or do you agree with her that the dialogue was rough? Because I do agree some of the dialogue was corny.
No, I really liked the story a lot, and I liked how they told their story. Just so if we're going to just focus on the story, like the dialogue on it, I figured it was. I mean, the kind of way I looked at it was that it was kind of a satire on the genre of the unkillable assassin kind of movie, and it was being delivered in some places kind of flat, and I think it. Considering what I know of these actors and what I've seen of these actors do, I feel like that was intentional because of what kind of story they're telling. So I found it to be a bit of a satire, which made it a lot more fun for me. And I liked how they're trying to be serious, but with a wink and a nod to the viewer.
Well, let's talk about the cast then. Let's switch over to the cast because you've got Karen Gillan, Lena Headey, Carla Gugino, Angela Bassett, right? I mean, you've got just a ton of Michelle Yeoh.
A stellar cast.
A great cast. Paul Giamatti's on here somewhere. Mm-hmm. So did they deliver? Because I'll tell you what, that's one thing. I thought Karen Gillan was fantastic. She actually surprised me because I didn't know how she did in the lead, and I thought she was a lot of fun.
She was wonderful. I really enjoyed her. This is actually where the strongest rating for me in terms of the film was, because there are some fun action scenes and you know, that you said it's outlandish and ridiculous, and it is, but it's still fun. But Karen Gillan makes the movie, for me, watchable. But she was incredibly talented. I think we've all expected her to find a moment where she can shine as a lead because she's so often put as a supporting actress.
Mm-hmm.
And here she's really given the opportunity to be funny, to be a badass, to be cool, to be a little weird. You know, like she's allowed to be whatever and all over the place, but it was her movie to take the direction of. And for her to be able to stand up to so many incredible names that we've watched in films for years, for decades, you know, she sat right in with them. And it was like, okay, yeah, she's been doing this for just as long as them, even though we know she hasn't because she's incredibly young, but compared to some of them. And
some of the fights were great.
Yeah. No, she was fun to watch. I liked her a lot.
A lot of creative kills too. So let's segue to the action then. Oh, by the way, I want to say the only downside to casting that I can think of for Gunpowder Milkshake, which is on Netflix, was there were really no memorable bad guys. The villains were really just giant caricatures. I didn't feel like any of them had a real personality. So you didn't get any of the same vibe like you got with, what is her name? Adrian Padalecki? Is that her name from John Wick? No? Okay. You didn't get any of the same vibes.
You're right.
Okay. You didn't get any of the same vibes as you did from other villains in like that kind of series or Kingsman series, you know? So there's nothing memorable about the villains, but the rest of the cast, I mean, you're just top notch across the board. You can't go wrong. So the action, we loved them. John, what about you? Did you love the action here?
Oh, absolutely. The action was phenomenal. And again, this is one of those things where I thought, like, there's an older series of movies that I used to love watching called Mad Mission, which were it's either out of Japan or Korea or something. I think it's Japan. That I grew up watching, where the action in this kind of reminded me of the action in that, where it was just over the top and cartoony and fun, and it really kind of brought that fun back and took away some of the seriousness that movies like John Wick is throwing at us, or maybe Nobody is throwing at us. And it had more of that, like, we're going to really do some crazy stuff kind of fun in the action. And yeah, I loved it.
The action is enjoyable. It's fun. It's creative. But there was so many times where
so many butts.
There are a lot of butts in this review of this movie. But there were so many times where it just felt like, all right, we're trying to be John Wick. And I know that in most cases, that's not fair to compare one movie to another. But when so much of it feels like a copy and paste, it's hard to not notice that. And I'm not saying that the action scenes are replicas of John Wick, but one of the things that stood out, even John Wick and Kingsman, is the originality with it. And quite honestly, the only original concept that they have here is when she gets drugged. And I guess that's all I'll say because I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
That's hysterical,
it's a fun,
though.
Yeah, it's a fun moment. It's absolutely ludicrous and incredibly unbelievable, but it is a lot of fun. And I think that's where they were trying to take it. And that's where I can see the satirical side of it. It's just when it comes to that, the dialogue and the interactions of the characters and how underutilized some of the best actresses in this film are, it kind of just sours the whole experience for me. And it's like, okay, there's a lot of people who can put together cool action sequences, but can you write a story that I care about? Can you write characters that I care about? And that's a component that is not missing from other films in this quote-unquote subgenre like Kingsman and John Wick. We enjoy those characters. We care about them. We care about what's going on with them. I had no interest. You know, like, I didn't buy into Karen Gillan's character being invested in this little girl because of her own personal experiences.
Really?
Because we spent 2 minutes on it and it's like, oh, okay.
I did. I totally bought into it.
I'm in a minority here. And it's weird because I'm typically the person who enjoys pretty much whatever. You know, there's not many things that I'm going to poo-poo on. I do. I enjoy, unless it's a Western, I enjoy pretty much everything. I am very rarely do I give bad reviews like a 4 out of 10.
Well, I feel bad for you because you've kind of just been like, oh, all these people are just like, that movie was great, da da da. And poor Amanda's over here going, well, all right then, I guess I saw a different movie.
And I was so proud of this review. I was like, man, I really poured my heart into it. And then everybody else is like, man, I don't know where you came out of left field with that. And I'm like,
Never,
look, to each their own. If you enjoy
ever.
it, I'm happy you enjoy it.
Never
It's just...
listen to that nonsense, because the review is your opinion. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. There are plenty of movies that I thought were garbage, and people will tell me how amazing they are, and vice versa. So, it's your opinion. It is what it is. And if you believe that, because you don't trash much. I mean, you might not like some things, but you don't trash much, and it didn't work for you. It's fine.
I was bored. You know how
I think
hard
there
for
were
me
moments
to get
where I was
bored.
bored. There were definitely moments where I was bored. I do not think this is a great movie. It's barely a good movie. It was just a fun watch. If this was at the theater, I really feel like I would have felt different about it. Less, I would have enjoyed it a little bit less, because the first 40 minutes are slow. They're really slow. Once you get to the drugging part, because the bowling alley scene I thought was not well done. That's probably the one action scene.
Oh my God. Oh
like
God.
it.
Don't even remind me. Some of those camera pans and like.
It was just too over the top. It was trying too hard is what it felt like.
Yeah.
But once you get to the point where she's drugged, that's when the movie really is, okay, all right, I'm back on board. You got me. And the rest of the movie had me. So it was fun, and it was very creative. It was basically like watching a slasher movie. You're just waiting to see which kill is the coolest. That's all that was.
And then it also suffers from this complex that I'm seeing more often in the past few years, and I don't know why it's coming up as a reoccurrence so prominently, is this issue where, okay, we're going to make you feel like the movie has ended, woo! And then, oh no, just kidding, we have a whole nother act of the movie that we need to get through. So your climax happened, but we're going to give you another one that's not as good, and then we'll conclude the movie. And that's kind of where I felt with this one, where it was like, I had so much action and climactic moments happen, and then we get to the actual final third act, and I feel like my investment was done because I felt like the movie was done. And then we're like, no, we're not done yet.
So really what I'm hearing here is you hate fun. That's the way I understand it, right? John,
that's what I heard.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I liked watching people die. That was cool. That was fun.
It's cool, man. If you want to live in your I'm so better than everybody else castle, that's cool. Enjoy.
Yeah, we get it.
Brick by brick.
I was here for the murder, and that's about it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's about it, John.
So Amanda, if $10 is the full price of admission, what do you give Gunpowder Milkshake? A weird title, by the way.
Yeah. I gave that one a 4 out of 10 because they are indeed not bringing all the boys to the yard.
You're just very proud of that one line, aren't you?
You know what? I didn't work hard on it at all. But if it's a win, I'll take it.
John, what about you? You saw it. So what do you give Gunpowder Milkshake out of 10?
I gave it 5.5.
Yep. Same here, about 5.50. It's not a really good movie, but it is a movie. By the end of it, I would love to see them reunited with a better script.
Yeah, I would like to see it. Yeah, exactly. Or even on the big screen too. Take the show on the road.
Make a better movie for that. All right. So speaking of the big screen, let's go to Space Jam: A New Legacy, which is available in theaters and on HBO Max.
All right. So Aaron, check this out. So Space Jam 2, a rogue artificial intelligence kidnaps the son of famed basketball player LeBron James, who has to work with Bugs Bunny to win a basketball game. It stars LeBron James, Don Cheadle, Cedric Joe, and one of the things that jumped out a bit at me when I was reading this whole story was that it's actually kind of the reverse of the original Space Jam, where the Looney Tunes needed Michael Jordan's help. Like, do you appreciate that change in story, Aaron, or is that just they're trying a little hard?
Okay, a story question about Space Jam 2. So there isn't one. It's
okay.
I guess it is the opposite of that movie. That's fair. I didn't really care. I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, it's Space Jam. It's basically find me a reason to play basketball with Looney Tunes characters and Warner Brothers characters. That's what the movie was. As the story goes, it actually, I'm not gonna lie, kind of worked better for me than the first one.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I really thought the first one was ridiculous. This one focuses more on LeBron James trying to kind of bond with his son. He wants his son to work hard, to achieve, and his son's over here playing video games. And he's like, man, you got to work, you got to put in the work if you want to be successful. Very much like a very successful dad trying to make his kid follow suit. And then the movie kind of branches off into this whole techno world where Don Cheadle's character, Algae Rhythm.
What now?
Algae Rhythm. Algae Rhythm. It's basically.
Oh, I thought that was like an ocean reference.
I wish it was. But it's essentially a program that Warner Brothers has developed and now is taking over its own personality and wants to dominate the earth and needs LeBron James's face to basically use the social media following that he has to blow it up, I guess. I think that's the story.
Wow, you sound so enthused by this
story's dumb, man. It's dumb, but it's also a kid's movie. I've seen a lot of reviews for it and people are just trashing this movie left and right. And I will tell you, I was watching this of two minds. I'm watching it as X number of years old Aaron, who doesn't really like the first Space Jam. And I'm trying to think of this movie wasn't made for me. And when I have a very personal attribute that I take it very seriously when you're reviewing as a critic, review the movie based on who the movie's made for. If it's not for you, try to get in the mindset of the people it's made for. This is made for kids. It's a kid's movie. And as far as kids go, they don't give a damn what the story is. It works. It makes sense. It's visually popping. It's lots of things are going on. There's tons of Warner Brothers characters and references and Easter eggs and fun little stuff for them. So it's not made for me. I don't care about Space Jam, but kids are going to love it.
Okay. So my next question for you, Aaron, has to do with the way they produced it. So I see that there's a lot of 2D animation in it, like the first one, but I also see that they went very hard for the 3D animation feel of it. How did that sit with you?
I actually love that because they actually integrate that into the quote unquote story. It actually comes into play as the movie plays out, and they go from the 2D animation, the traditional animation that you're used to, Looney Tunes characters, into their revamped, modernized 3D animation. And it's actually a little bit played for laughs and a little bit played for story. So it worked completely well. And I liked how they did it because it was a really nice way of taking old fogies like myself and saying, here's the ones you're used to, the cartoons you're used to. Bam! We've modernized them. And here's why. And it works.
All right, that's great. So finally, Michael Jordan or LeBron, who actually did a better job?
Michael Jordan. By far. Also a better basketball player. I said it. What? Got more championships. Just saying. Go ahead. Tom Brady's the best in the NFL. Michael Jordan's the best in basketball. LeBron James can't act. Let's just say that. There's a lot of good acting in here. Don Cheadle is freaking great. I don't know if I've ever seen Don Cheadle put so much into a role as he does as, wait for it, Algae Rhythm. But he gives everything he has, and he has a ton of fun. He is fun to watch. The entire movie, I was like, Don Cheadle's having a blast, and it's making me enjoy it. Even though he's the villain, he's fun to watch. LeBron James can't act, but there's some moments where he does as well as you would hope. And he also kind of acknowledges that he's not an actor in the movie, so it's a little meta, which I appreciate. But Michael Jordan, for whatever reason, I just think he had that instant charisma that just plays in whatever he's doing. LeBron James is enjoyable, but not the same.
So what's your score on the movie out of 10?
Well, if $10 is full price of admission, Aaron would say this is a 5 at best. Because, I was entertained for most of it. Wouldn't watch it again. But if Aaron had 2 little kids that I was tired of having to pay attention to and need to get rid of them for a couple hours, this is an 8.5. Maybe a 10. I don't know, because they're not going to leave the TV. There's so much whiz bang. Oh my God, it's all over the place. It's crazy. There's Harry Potter. There's King Kong. There's a King Kong joke in here. John, there's a King Kong joke. It's great. It actually plays. There's a ton of Easter eggs. I mean, if you are even vaguely familiar with the Warner Brothers franchises and all their properties, I mean, you will see just about everything, and not just stuff for kids. I mean, Pennywise is in here at some point. There's a Mad Max reference. There's literally a whole scene that's kind of crafted around Mad Max Fury Road. So there's so many tie-ins to other Warner Brother properties that I don't think any movie fan won't at least find something to enjoy in it. There you go. How's that?
That sounds great. So
don't listen to some of these old fogies that write reviews based on what they want, which I don't know what you want from a story called Space Jam. I just don't know. But anyway, now finally we want to talk about the Fear Street trilogy. Now, technically, this movie is 3 weeks old. It's also just came out. I don't know where you sit, but we're going to talk about the whole trilogy, and we'll be spoiler free. But it is completed, all on Netflix, and it is based on R.L. Stine's books. And there are 3 films, 1994, 1978, and 1666. I saw the whole trilogy. Amanda, you saw the whole trilogy?
Absolutely, I did.
John, did you see the whole trilogy?
I did.
Okay, so we can speak to it openly without spoilers. It's about a circle of teenage friends who accidentally encounter the ancient evil responsible for a series of brutal murders that have plagued their town for over 300 years, believed to have been caused by the town witch known as Sarah Fear. Now, when I first heard this was written by the guy that did Goosebumps, I'm like, oh, great, it's going to be PG-13. Nope. There is a person whose face goes through a bread slicer. If you don't like gore, you're going to have problems. I'm just saying. Was that a spoiler? I don't know. Should I take that out?
You didn't even say which one it was in. You didn't say who it was.
Whew, there we go. So we're good. We're golden. I'm just saying there's blood, there's guts. This is very rated R. It is not PG-13. Just know that going in. And it's a horror trilogy that was released very interestingly. I'll come back to that. But it has 3 distinct styles for the most part. Did this work for you? Amanda, you're a big horror fan. Did that work for you?
Man, so much of this trilogy worked for me. I know I'm a bit more partial to 1994 just because of the atmosphere and all of the homages to Scream. They balanced that tightrope really well of not being a remake and more just honoring it. And there was just so much coolness about it where it felt like we were finally getting a reinvigorated horror franchise. Something that was a little bit different, something that was still, I don't want to say that it spooked me, but it certainly had tension moments, especially in the third one, I would say built the most tension. And I really liked the way that they were dropped where we get one full movie and that story kind of pretty much concludes. Like, I feel like if I didn't watch the rest of them, I'd at least be like, oh, okay, that's fine enough. I can use my imagination. And then the second and the third one tie in all of the details that you need to understand the complexity of this story. And it kind of reminded me at times of the Scream TV series and even Scream Queens. And so it was just a lot of fun. It was something that I looked forward to, and I enjoyed having something like that in the summer because it used to be really common back in like the 70s and 80s where we'd get these incredible summer horror flicks, and that kind of went away and it was pushed to the spooky season. And now we're finally getting some of that back here in July, which was awesome.
I really like what they came up with here. When you look at it, how they produced this movie or series of movies, it feels new. It feels exciting, even though they're landing in genres in which we've seen before. We've seen, and it's not any sort of like they're not breaking any sort of records here. It also came up to feeling like something that was brand new and different. So I really loved the story and how they produced it. Like the first one wasn't anything that really knocked my socks off because I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. The second one I really enjoyed just because of the way it was like a throwback to the 1980s and 1970s slasher flicks. And then the final one was just wonderful. The way it tied everything together and the way it told that whole story. It actually, I feel like if I go back and watch the first one over again and the second one, I'll get even more out of them.
Yeah, it was really interesting because the 1994 film felt, like Amanda said, very Screamish, a lot of kind of meta horror and stuff like that, a lot of references and sort of thing. And then you go to 1978, which is very much a Friday the 13th movie. It's totally a Friday the 13th summer camp movie. Which is, you think it was campy? I didn't really think it was super
I
campy.
mean, in terms of like a little bit, not over the top, not as campy as some of them, but I feel like as campy as they were willing to go in comparison to 1994 and 1666, it was much more campy.
Well, 1666 was really interesting, and I don't want to say too much because there's a cool twist like halfway through, and I don't want to tell anybody what that is. But it's an interesting way that they chose to go with that film, and a lot of it is like a supernatural, which is totally different. or supernatural vibe. Not necessarily supernatural, but a supernatural vibe. And then you kind of get the gist of what everything is going. And it does all tie together by the end. And they do feel like 3 separate films, but also 3 films that kind of go together, which was great. It was nice to have a trilogy that works on its own, but really works better together. You know what I mean? So that was fun, and get the different kind of styles. So you didn't just get bored. Because if I watch like 3 Friday the 13th movies, which I love that series, but if I watch them back to back to back, I think I'd be like, all right, I'm good. I think I get burned out by the last one. But by the last one, I think that was my favorite one by far. It was by a mile for me. And I normally don't like that vibe of a movie. I just, a lot of it was, I can't say anything, but a lot of it was in the supernatural vibe, which is less what I'm interested in horror. And that really worked for me. Like I was really compelled to follow that story. And I was like, oh, okay, we're getting all the backstory. And I know a lot of people thought it should have been the 1666 was first and then 1978 and then concludes in 1994. I actually think this way works very well. It really told the story kind of cool.
Well, you're able to draw in, I think this is maybe why they might have done it. I don't know for sure. This is me just talking out of my ass, but
that sounds painful.
They released 1994, which is going to capture the widest array of audiences, in my opinion. You're going to get in some of the younger generations that maybe didn't have the books to rely on, weren't interested in that. Maybe they haven't watched a whole lot of horror movies. They want something that they think is going to be not so edgy. Younger teens can watch it, but also older, middle-aged and older adults are going to be interested in it because they are more inclined to be interested in horror movies. And I feel like that age group, the middle age group, is more inclined to watch something that has Scream reminiscent vibes. And then you get all those audiences kind of drawn into it. And then you give them 78, which is like, okay, now we're going to give the older generations, no shade to John and Aaron here because that's their generation.
Little late.
We're going to give them something that they can say, oh man, this reminds me of when I would watch Friday the 13th at, a drive-in movie or something. And then you take it back even further. And that's where it gets really dark. The third one is where I feel like it got the darkest in many ways, emotionally and psychologically. And the second one was very gory. It was very much a slasher, summer camp slasher.
Which is what those movies were for those.
Yeah, exactly.
Films, for those Friday 13th-ish films. Like, that's how they were. They were over the top, gory, violent, bloody, ridiculous. I liked it.
Yeah. And I also really enjoy that they are so unique in their own way that when they do have, let's say you're in 1978, the second film, and, maybe they're referencing a moment that happened in 1994, the first one, when you're watching a flashback or something, that was from that first movie. They are so distinct that you don't have to wonder, oh, which time period was this? You know what I mean? I think you mentioned Cruel Summer, the TV show, had a little bit of fault there where it was sometimes a little unclear which time period it fell in. But they had an overt understanding of this is this timeline, this is this one, and this is this one.
And they did kind of a cool thing in 1666, where they had the actual actors from both of the previous films play roles in that time period. So they were still part of the movie, so you're instantly attached to them in a way. But
right.
They also are telling a story that we need to hear, and they make sure to point out like they're different people. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Despite their failed accents at times.
Man, nobody's going to nail those accents, let me tell you. So in terms of the release schedule, John, what did you think about how they chose to release this, where we got 1 week after week versus spreading it out a little bit, maybe even a month apart or a year apart? Are you glad that we got them so quick? It's basically like binge movies.
Yeah, I really actually appreciated that we did get them week after week. It made it easier to decide to sit down and watch them, and the ease of accessibility, I'm sure, really increased their viewership. So I actually am behind them for deciding to do it this way.
All right, at $10 full price admission, what do you give the Fear Street trilogy as a whole? Because it's a trilogy. So what do you give the trilogy as a whole, John?
I give the trilogy as a whole $7.50.
Amanda?
I give them $8. I want to watch them again at some point.
Yeah, I would go with $8. They were really fun. And now it's time for a From the Outside In topic. guess what? We're sticking with horror because why not? Horror in July. I think it's fun. And also, this idea spawned from Ken in Chicago on Twitter. So thanks, Ken. We're just giving you a little kudos there. Who asked us which is scarier, body horror or a psychological terror? Essentially, what terrifies you more, losing control of your body or your mind? So we're going to talk about that because that's a fascinating question in terms of what really scares you. So how do you define psychological terror, and what are like a thing or a couple things, not 16 things, that immediately come to mind to explain that for you?
Psychological terror is something I feel like you see them more often in thrillers. That's where you have an individual or individuals who are trying to taunt somebody and mess with their mind. They're making them feel like somebody is there and then something doesn't happen. And then they think they hear something here and then nothing happens. This is just an example. And then when they're not expecting it, that's when something happens. And it's just kind of that buildup of tension of them messing with their mind or making them think that things are happening when they're really not. That's the kind of thing that I really get drawn into. And it creates a great deal of tension for me because I'm like, is it real? Is it really happening? Or are they just kind of imagining it? Have they gotten so paranoid that now we're just seeing their paranoia reflected on screen?
Yeah, I like the way you kind of describe that. I would actually try to be a little bit more succinct with it by saying that psychological horror is that thing where you don't actually see the villain. You're actually just spending more time with your protagonist and and seeing how whatever is affecting the protagonist really take them down darker roads. I do enjoy the genre, and like when I think about movies that stand out in this genre for me, I think about like the first 20 minutes of When a Stranger Calls.
Oh God, that's so good.
Yep.
You don't see anything, and it's terrifying.
Yeah. And the more recently, I think Hereditary did a really good job with it too.
Well, like with the head? Where'd that head go? Rolled over there.
She was asking for it.
She really does. She was kind of begging for it. So you really think that Hereditary is very... Which part of that would you say is the most psychological?
Well, the first two acts are primarily psychological.
Yeah, they don't really show a whole lot, do they?
No, they really don't.
Yeah.
And you're going down this road with Toni Collette that you think where she's losing her mind and she's suffering from all these like guilt and whatever, and she starts to see things, and the same thing happens to her son, and then it's not until the final act, and even then it's like the final 10 minutes of the movie where it really loses its mind, and that's when the crowd goes wild.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation with somebody recently, and I was explaining how I felt one of my favorite movies is more of a psychological horror than it is just a horror movie, and the movie's Jaws, which obviously everybody's seen Jaws, right? And it's been talked about probably a lot this summer because it's, summer movie, summer blockbuster, Jaws pops up. But if you really, really think about it, psychological horror is something where it gets in your head, and that's the thing that scares you. And I can't think of a movie that scared me more psychologically than Jaws because it made me fearful to even get in an ocean. To me, that's when I think psychological. I mean, it not only gets in the characters' heads, it gets in my head. It affects my level of comfortability. And Jaws doesn't really show a ton of gore. There isn't really a lot of actual things that you see until midway through, really. Most of it is anticipation. It's what happens underneath the water. The scene where the guys swim into the boat and you see the jaws of Jaws, right? Opening up. When you see the jaws of Bruce opening up and then snatching him underwater, that is a horrifying thing to see. And it hits my brain. Even though I don't see the gore of it and I don't actually see much happening, that was psychological to me because I was terrified of water. Literally just water because of that movie. And I was terrified while watching the movie because of things I don't see. You don't even really see the shark until midway through the movie. And I was still scared like the whole time. So to me, that really is a psychological thriller or horror. I think of Silence of the Lambs is an easy one to throw out there because Hannibal Lecter, just his conversations are so unnerving and they get under your skin. They just really, really kind of ripple you in that respect. Candyman is one. Tony Todd just had his voice, for whatever reason, the way that he spoke, his cadence, all of that was really terrifying to me in a way. Like the movie, none of the gore stuff scared me at all. Bees a little bit, but that's a whole nother story. Like anything with bees scares me psychologically. But whenever his speaking and his cadence and everything else, that was just so unnerving to me. Very similar to Hellraiser, Pinhead. The gore never bothered me. Pinhead bothered me. You know, the visual aesthetic, that got in my head. So, you know, I think psychological can mean more than what most people apply it to. To me, it's very much, does it get in my head and scare me? You know, gore to me is more like I see it, it makes me, you know, and we'll talk more about gore in a second, but psychological is, yes, it's in the characters, it's in their heads. I mean, Gone Girl is a perfect example of a psychological thriller. Like, that's very horrifying because we've all dated somebody that crazy. So we all get it. And men and women, you know, on both sides of the coin. And so, you know, those kinds of things can get with you, but it stays with you. And that to me is also a psychological horror of sorts. Anything that stays with you.
Yeah, I would add in Misery, Rosemary's Baby, even Hush.
Oh, because those whacking the legs, whacking the feet.
Whenever they do something that, it's the terror of reality in many ways. And it's not about what I think to your point, where you're not actually watching anything physically happen, but you get to watch the reaction of your main character and the fear that they have that someone's watching them, or someone is so obsessed with them and that increases their paranoia or their fear. And that escalation of emotions, the audience then begins to feel. So, I think to your other point, I think everybody defines psychological horror a little bit differently based on their own fears, because it's what taps into your mind. Like you said, Jaws was psychologically terrifying for you, whereas maybe something else scares somebody and it literally terrifies them, like eight-legged freaks. Maybe that's a psychological terror for them. I don't know.
I think it counts. I mean, you know, there's different ways you can put it. You can think of it, I think. And if you think of like slasher movies, you know, I'm a huge fan of Friday the 13th and any movie where kids get killed at a summer camp. Why? I don't know. I had a bad summer camp experience and it's really none of your business. We're not going to talk about that anymore. But I was happy with a lot of those dispatched victims. But what really, the movies never scare me in terms of the gore. I always find that just funny. But whenever they're running through the woods, that's a real thing. Like that can freak me out if it's done really well. Blair Witch has nothing gory in it whatsoever. And I know people, Blair Witch is so tame. Shut up. If you saw it when it came out, maybe you're one of those special ones that weren't bothered. But I was scared. I was freaked out in several parts of that movie. And there's nothing gory about it. It is all psychological because it really just messes with your head. John, you saw it in the theater, right? Did you see it? I think you saw it in the theater.
Oh, yeah. I definitely saw that one in the theater. And it was like, I've never been so afraid of a pile of sticks in my life.
Right, exactly. And a guy looking in the corner and you're like, oh my God, he's looking in the corner. And, you know, that just seems like such a ridiculous thing, but they did such a good build up to that moment that it pays off completely.
Even the marketing, it's like those people, it really happened to those people. They're doing press junkets and they're talking to people. No, it's real.
Yeah, that part was weird because I did have friends that said, no, it's real. And I'm like, I literally saw an interview with them. They're fine. No, man, that was before the movie. I'm like, why would they be doing press for a movie that ain't out yet? That's weird. But...
Right. One way or the other, they're doing press after they made it.
One of my favorite scenes in film history is Reservoir Dogs, the whole torture scene. And that is gore, I would say, to, I guess, a very small degree. But none of the gore is what bothers me. It is completely just a person completely incapacitated, which is a personal fear. You know, the fact that you have no control of your life, someone torturing him. And it's more about the dancing around the torture. Like, what's he going to do? What is he going to do to that guy? What is it going to be that he's going to do to this guy? What pain is he going to inflict? That whole leading up to it is very psychological to me. Like that is what freaks me out. Cutting the ear off, that's just a cool movie thing to a cool song. The actual psychological terror of it, to me, which did freak me out when I first watched it, it was very unnerving. I didn't know what he was going to do, and it was really just unnerving to watch in many respects. All right, so let's move on to the gore or bodily injury horror. I guess you can look at it either way, but it's really gore because body parts are hurting, cuts, slash, fingernails being pulled out.
Oh, I was going to say fingernails are my... Ugh.
Yeah. John, where are you at with gore, body injury horror?
Oh my God. Psychological has its merits. Gore also has its merits depending on how it's done.
Sure.
At this point in cinema, it's one of those things where you can tell the bad and you can tell the good, and sometimes they're both good and sometimes they're both bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you have tons of entrails, that's never scary to me.
Right.
Lots of intestines just laying around, blah, I'm just holding, guys looking very dramatic as he's holding his guts. I'm like, he would be dead. This is silly. This is just dumb.
But take out somebody's eye and I'm like, no! Not the eye. God damn it.
Pluck it out with chopsticks.
There is so many movies that I could think of that just do it terribly. But again, it's one of those things that you either get it really like Hostel is one that I can think of that got it done right. And even the sequel where it's like, they can't possibly do this any worse. They did, and it's fine. Or, the Human Centipede is another one where it's like, you can't... You can't make this worse. And they found a way to make it both a bad movie afterwards. Like the two sequels are both bad and worse at the same time as far as scarier.
What really interests me about this conversation and where it took a turn is that you've seen both the sequels to the Human Centipede, but you haven't seen The Greatest Showman.
I still haven't seen that yet.
You took time out of your day to watch a guy put his sew a mouth onto an ass. Yeah, sorry, spoiler alert, that's what Human Centipede's about. Think about it. But you didn't take the time to watch Rebecca Ferguson dazzle you with a song, or Hugh Jackman do a little dance. That's where you are in your cinema achievements.
See, I was very afraid that watching The Greatest Showman would make me like a little bit happy, and I can't afford to feel that way right now.
Well, now it makes sense. It's all Human Centipede. So keep watching those sequels, and if they keep cranking them out, you'll just watch them all.
Right, because at least it's like par for the course for me.
So disturbing you are. Amanda, where are you on gore?
I like gore. I have no qualms with seeing it on screen. There are some things like fingernails that get under my skin more than others. But it's not something that scares me. And I feel like that's where my defining line is in this question, is if we're talking about what's scary, gore is not scary to me. Sometimes it can make you go, ooh and ah and ugh, but it's not something that terrifies me. It's not something that makes me shiver or anything. It's the psychological horror that messes with me. Gore is something that I think is, for whatever reason, it is enjoyable to watch on screen for horror fans.
Isn't that weird?
It is
weird,
very
right?
weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about us as people, but a lot of the people that I know that are, really big horror fans are also some of the sweetest people I know and the kindest people. So,
yeah,
there's
like serial killers would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. And introverts.
Fantasies being played out on screen.
That's so you don't do it. That's
exactly.
That's Jenny from The Office. That's what it's out of my system. I don't have to think about it anymore. Yay, I gotta listen to some true crime so I at least know how to do it correctly.
But it's one of those things where people who don't like horror movies, I feel like they get more creeped out by the gore for whatever reason. If they're not really somebody who watches it, they can handle the psychological portion of it better than they can handle the gore. And I don't know why that is scarier to them. I don't know why gore in general is scary at all. it could be because I grew up with a very clear understanding. You know, I was taught and shown the behind the scenes of scary movies and how it's all not real. So maybe in the back of my mind, I just recognize this isn't real. But I guess that's my question back to you guys is, what makes it scary for people? Why is, you know, seeing a slasher flick like Friday the 13th, why does that scare someone?
It's you're not in control of the situation, I think, is a part of it. I think very much a part of it is, this is a situation where I live my life and I'm in control of everything I do, but here's a situation where a madman is going to kill me and he's going to cut off a part of my person and I can't do anything about it. So there's that fear. Like if you go back to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a lot of gore in there. A lot of it's implied, but there's still a lot of gore in it. And that is one where it terrified me because it was so realistic. It was so visceral, and it really felt like I'm not going to escape this, you know, in your mind. And the horror, every time you saw somebody get killed, it really felt like, oh my God, this could happen to me. And then you're walking around and you're like, So just the idea of a killer on the loose and you have no control over the situation, and then seeing what they do to the people that they're attacking, I think that sits with a lot of people. I mean, there's definitely horror movies that have worked that magic with me in terms of the terror of it all.
Well, yeah, jumping on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, some of those kills were just like pure brutality. And the thing that really gets you about that is that it's not some sort of like demon killer or like ghost monster thing. Those are real people. Those are real people that you will find in the middle of nowhere, you know, on you know, I drive down these streets in North Carolina lately and I'm like, hey, that's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre house. Look at everything that's in the front yard. There's like 15 cars. I can't imagine that house needs 15 cars of all those different years. And then the way some of those deaths happen, like especially in the remake, I don't know why it hit me harder in the remake than in the original, but that first kill where he, you know, Leatherface slides that door open, brains a dude, and he's just on the ground and his whole body is convulsing from the head trauma.
Yeah.
You know, that, like, I imagine that's exactly what it would be like with that much head trauma from a freaking sledgehammer. It wouldn't be like, boom, your body's still, there's got to be something firing in what's left of his brain to be doing all that. And it's got to be excruciating. And it's just, ugh.
Yeah, there's a movie I love, and I think I've mentioned it once or twice before, but not often because it makes me embarrassed to admit it. But it's a movie called Relentless. It stars Judd Nelson, where he's a serial killer, and whenever he kills somebody, and yes, I said Judd Nelson, goddammit, and he's very good in that one particular role. But the way that he kills people is that he basically finds them wherever they are. He puts the weapon in their hand and then he makes them do it to themselves. And so you basically watch the knife go in. You watch them choke themselves. You know, it's very visceral in that way. And for whatever reason, that one always kind of got me. That was terrifying to me because you're watching a killer inflict pain to your own person without your control. It's a lot of it to me is like the lack of self-control and the damage that the weapons and the person are doing to your body. And that's just one example where it really got to me. And that wasn't so much psychological because the knife is going in the woman's chest. And I'm like, oh my God, if somebody came up behind me, they could make me do that. Oh my God, that's terrifying. You know, it just gets in your head.
I think there is an element of psychological horror though, because it's somebody who's removing your ability to choose, your ability to actually decide what's going to happen. And they've taken that control from you in a much different way than if they were to just come up to you and stab you. Because you're sitting there in that individual's shoes as a viewer. You're sitting in that person's shoes, the innocent person, and you're having to watch them make that choice. And so you can feel that terror that they must be thinking and feeling, and how much fear they must have and what they have to go through to get to the point where they do what this killer is asking of you. killer
And-
by association or whatever.
Yeah, and to jump off that, another part of it, another piece of it, kind of connecting the tissue on that, is that we're all very familiar with our own bodies, right? Like a lot of movies or television, when you're watching them, it's all fantasy. You know, you're not a really cool cop. You're not a really great doctor. You're not a really cool lawyer. But whenever you see pain inflicted on a person, pulling a fingernail, we've all done that, or we've almost done it, or we thought about doing it, and you know what it would feel like. You know, somebody stubs a toe in a movie. That can really create a visceral reaction because we all know exactly what that feels like. You know, a lot of it is we have fingers and toes and eyeballs and ears and noses and hearts. Yeah, everything else that can, and we know that would hurt. That would really hurt. So if we see it on screen, oftentimes it can correlate in our brain and be like, if that would really hurt if that was me. It really hurt to lose an eyeball. I think that would be very painful. So I can envision the loss of that eye.
Or, you know, if you get like a lead pipe shoved up your bum hole because it's a revenge film, you can think, ouch, this probably wouldn't feel good.
Depends on your perspective.
Hey, what you do on your time is your business.
Exactly. It's kind of interesting when you think about it, because there's a lot of things that I think when you think bodily injury and gore, like a lot of gore, subtle gore gets me way more than anything. Like I was talking about entrails where somebody's just holding their guts. That never does anything. I'm just like, it's so ridiculous. You know, if you're watching Friday the 13th and you get a crazy kill, that's more just fun to watch than it is. For whatever reason, don't judge me. It's just more fun to watch than anything else. But then there are other ones where it's just very, I don't know, just gets under your skin. I don't know. You watch Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th Part 2 is the only one that really, really gets under my skin. And it's just more because of how it's shot. But a lot of the kills are more intense, I think, because of just a lot of the kills just feel more personal in nature. So when there is something gory, it feels like that could be me. I could be in that situation. There's one where he kills a guy in a wheelchair. It's really kind of a sad scene. And the same token, the gore really impacted the whole shot. You know, a lot of times that can really impact a shot. If you do it right. If you overdo it, makes the movie look cheesy. Sleepaway Camp. Just saying. All right. So we covered psychological. We covered gore. So that's the question. What's scarier for you? I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but you got to pick one. What scares you more and why?
For me, for sure, psychological. The gory horror is more just like usually I think you put it nicely, where it's fun. You like, hoorah, the crazier the gore, the kill, you're just like, whoa, that's creative and that's crazy and that's fun.
Yeah, Miles Teller should be in more horror movies.
Yeah. Psychological actually scares me, and that's where my line is. Gore does not scare me. Psychological actually affects me. And so, you know, it's got to be the winner.
I'm going to have to agree that psychological will scare me more. However, gore is a lot more fun to see in the theater. Okay.
Well, that makes sense, but which is scarier though? Like you're saying psychological.
Which is scarier, psychological, of course. So you mentioned Gone Girl, and I remember after I saw Gone Girl, I didn't sleep well for like a month and a half, 2 months, because I was like, I was having flashbacks.
Who am I living with?
Yeah.
It's more like you start reflecting on your past, right? And you're like, oh, they could come back.
Yeah.
They can always come back.
I'm telling you. I thought that movie was a documentary for a while.
Yeah.
I'm just like, are we sure? Are we sure this is fiction? Ben Affleck might be in a documentary. I don't know. Same way. I mean, it usually psychological will get me more. But on the same token, man, I don't get. Here's what I would say. I think when I was younger, up until probably like my mid-20s, psychological really got me way more than anything else. But as I've gotten older, anything that's a real painful death or infliction of pain, you pull a fingernail off of anybody, I can't look at it. I legitimately can't look at it. I can't watch a bee sting. Like when somebody gets stung a lot with bees, because I'm phobic of bees. So, I mean, there are certain things that are terrifying to me. And fingernails getting pulled off or toenails getting pulled off is by far the worst thing I can watch. Like, that scares me more than anything Hannibal Lecter could ever say, because I can walk away from words. I can't walk away from somebody pulling my fingernails off.
Well, you could, but it would hurt even more.
That would be kind of adding to the problem, I guess. Yeah.
to help with that, like, we're of a certain age. When you trip over a branch, that's going to affect you for a while.
Yeah.
And all you're thinking about is like, wow, that bodily injury that's happening to that poor person is going to be the rest of their life. They're going to be feeling that.
I've been that poor person. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So I'm totally with you on that.
Can I add in
an age
an
thing.
additional category of fear, which is probably my most significant fear factor?
No, that's how you would
Well,
do it. We get an extra
going
episode
to.
out of that. We milk it, but you can mention it, but you're not
I'll
going to
mention it.
Okay.
Supernatural, especially as I've gotten older, things with ghosts
Oh,
or,
my God.
creepy things like that, for whatever reason, they legitimately terrify me. It is so hard for me to sit through something when it's supernaturally. And it's weird because I'm very agnostic. It's not like I, pray to a higher power or, genuinely believe in ghosts. I think the possibilities for anything exist. But you would think that I would have that deep fear if I truly believed in it and that Satan was sending ghosts back to Earth to terrorize people as demons. But that's not where I'm at. It's just for whatever reason, man, if I see a ghost and they creep up behind somebody, I might pee my pants.
See, I am so not scared of anything ghost related. For whatever reason, The Conjuring got me a couple times. So, I mean, there's some good jump scares and stuff like that. But my God, I don't believe in ghosts. So I just don't get scared in ghost movies. And if I had a ghost, I'd probably just walk around naked just to make him leave. I mean, there's nothing really about ghosts that do anything for me. Nothing. So, but that would maybe fall under psychological, because I think you got to be crazy to believe in ghosts. Ha!
That's rude.
I'm just kidding. You don't have to be crazy, but I just don't. I don't. So psychological seems like the win. Although I do think I'm probably more affected by gore nowadays, just because of the fingernails thing. It's really a problem. If I see it, man, it really ruins my day. I will actually cut my fingernails. I always cut my fingernails. After I see a scene like that, I will go cut them, because I'm just nah. No, that's going to have to go. I don't want it ripped off on accident.
There's only so many times you can watch America's Funniest Home Video to see some poor dad get hit in the nards for you to be like, okay, that's enough of that.
Exactly. This is not funny anymore because I know it's me.
Right.
I've got a couple listener comments I want to read, and just to kind of expand the argument, I guess. Christina Flores said, Gore scares me far more than psychological. So Gore wins for her, especially when it's based on a true story. The very thought that there are people out there that could brutally torture, mangle, and savagely kill someone terrifies me. And that kind of goes back to my point. In this day and age, I think gore might be more affecting when done really well, just because there are so many more people that will do that sort of thing these days. It just feels like, not to go back to our age again, but when John and I were kids, there weren't a ton of, there were a few serial killers now and again that popped up, but you didn't hear about murder all the time. Now, that's the obsession with most of the world, is true crime, documentaries, podcasts, whatever.
We're listening to murder while we're eating our breakfast cereal.
Yeah.
Man, I watch Criminal Minds while I'm eating my lunch. I put up my Netflix in my office, shut the door, and I just watch that terror come across my screen. And then I wonder why I have a hard time sleeping and wondering if I'm hearing a noise or if it's just the dryer. Somebody in my house, or is it just the dryer?
Maybe it's somebody in your house doing laundry.
Come on in.
That's a weird invitation, but you're going to regret it.
If you want to do my laundry?
I didn't say your laundry. I said doing laundry. They're walking around, they got a sack of laundry, and they're like, oh, there's a nice place to do my clothes.
So weird.
At 3 a.m. That's fine. It's like a laundromat that I break into. Jess Dyma says, psychological for sure for the long-lasting impact, but I would say bodily injury and gore has a more immediate impact. It gets that split-second visceral reaction from the audience where psychological horror is a slower burn and really takes its time burrowing into your mind and haunting you long after the credits roll. It's like a really hot pepper. The initial burn is the gore, but that later payoff for the plumbing is all psychological.
Good point.
That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'm all for pepper
We could have
analogies.
just canceled this entire podcast and just read that comment, and we wouldn't have had so much discussion.
Don't think it was quite that good, but, we'll give him whatever credit you'd like. All right.
I just meant it was succinct compared to me.
Yes, that is a fact. I think, John, has Amanda gotten any more succinct since you've been gone?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Good
Okay.
call.
Rude.
Next week, Troy Heinrichs is coming back, and then there's going to be, for the first time in a long time, four hosts. We're just going to have to get a button, is what we're going to have to do, man. And we're going to have to institute a button, and we'll just have to cut you off.
Troy is worse than I am. Thank you very much.
He is not.
Yes, but Troy is interesting.
Whoa! I want to cast my vote to kick John off the island.
Wow.
That one, I felt it in here, in my heart. It hurt.
Oh, you don't have a heart there.
Oh, it's funny. Okay, well, that does
So
it for
mean.
our topic. What's coming out in the near future, guys?
Where did I put it? Okay.
That's what she said.
So coming up first, we have Snake Eyes on July 23rd. The G.I. Joe spin-off centered around the character of Snake Eyes. Henry Golding is playing Snake Eyes, and Ursula Cobero is the Baroness, which that's all great and fine. But Samara Weaving's in this, and that was the one thing that really sold me that I need to watch this one.
Yeah,
so
that's exciting.
Yeah. And then M. Night Shyamalan's back on the same day with Old, a thriller about a family on a tropical holiday who discovered that the secluded beach they were relaxing on a few hours is somehow causing them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. This stars a whole bunch of people, with the exception of Rufus Sewell, that you don't know, which I was really excited up until I saw that Rufus Sewell was in this, and I'm like, oh no. Because, I mean, I really like Rufus Sewell.
He's a curse, man. He's a curse.
But he really is a curse.
Yeah.
Like, he's done one good movie.
He's so cursed. I wonder if he even watches this movie and going, God, why did I do that? I ruined it by just showing up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. He's great, but for some reason, he shows up, it turns bad.
Can't beat science. Amanda?
Nope.
Coming to VOD on July 23rd, we have Settlers, a science fiction drama in which human settlers on Mars are confronted by new arrivals on the planet. It's us trying to escape Earth. Spoiler alert. Then we also have Jolt on July 23rd coming to Amazon Prime. A bouncer with an anger management problem goes on a revenge-fueled rampage after the murder of a friend. And it has Kate Beckinsale and Jai Courtney. So it has Kate Beckinsale and Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah.
Neither one of those two things are great.
Yeah. Kate Beckinsale.
I mean, she's great to look
I
at.
was going to say, what? Who are you?
Is she going to be wearing black, like,
I
pleather,
hope so.
Pete.
black vinyl the whole time?
But how about a shout out for Pete Davidson, huh?
I salute you,
I
sir.
don't know what you're doing, but you're doing it right. Any recent
Right.
film or TV recommendations not previously discussed?
Never Have I Ever Season 2 has released on Netflix, so if you enjoyed the first season, I would highly recommend that. And thanks to Aaron, I have started watching Bosch and finally watched Werewolves Within, both of which are extremely entertaining.
So I was right twice.
You were correct.
All right. So I last week the final season of Atypical dropped. It's a show that I've talked about at great length.
Mhm.
It's a show that I love and adore. The final season does it a lot of justice. And if you haven't seen it yet or haven't seen the series, please do go check it out. It is a beautiful show to watch.
That's
so
Netflix,
my-
right? You said Netflix. It's Netflix.
I'll say Netflix now, though.
Okay.
So, speaking of where I see things, my sister is one of these people who believes that the internet, because you can get free movies and television off of the internet, that you shouldn't have to pay for it. So, in my current living situation, I've been really enjoying watching the entirety of Night Court. It's been a long time since I've seen Night Court. And so I started at season 1 and I'm on season 5 currently. And my God, that show was before its time.
Wasn't that just so raunchy when you really look back? I mean, it was really kind of bold and made fun of literally everyone.
But also awesome.
Oh, yeah. There was nobody that was safe in that show. Nobody was. It didn't give a damn who you were. It was going to make fun of you. Like if you were blind, they were making fun of you.
So many return gags that come back and pay off so well. Like I'm feeling much better now. I mean, that just became a joke when somebody would say it, and you just start laughing because it's just so unnerving. I keep saying that word.
I find myself going, is that where I got that from? There's a lot of that I keep going into. Oh, like, or I'll see something that reminds me of my brother and I'm like, oh my God, this show is so ingrained in my DNA that I didn't even realize that's where I got a lot of this stuff from.
Dan Fielding is one of, if not one of, the top 2 most impactful TV or film characters of my entire life.
Yeah.
Which I think is obvious if you watch Night Court.
Yep.
He's just such a wonderfully funny dick. And because he's never not funny, but he's always a dick. Even when there's very sweet moments where his character will actually, you think he goes through some growth or something and he'll actually do something for someone else. And then 5 minutes later, dick.
Right.
I love him.
It's the
love
best.
Him. Oh, such a good balance of character, especially what is it after season 2 or season 3 when Marky Post shows up, right?
It's season 3 where she shows up at the beginning of season 2 for about 5 seconds, and then she's gone. And season 3 she shows up
as a full-time member, right?
Yeah,
and she I think she balanced the show out. Like they had a couple issues where they lost some bailiffs because they passed away behind the scenes, and then they finally got Marsha Warfield, and she did great. Like just by the time they got all that sorted out, like the show really just found its groove, and it's still one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Right.
So good.
Yeah, the first 2 bailiffs that Marsha Warfield kind of took the place of, they were pretty much the same character, only slight difference. But Marsha Warfield is her own character. It's all completely her own, and she's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good. I'm glad you're watching that, man. It makes me want to go back and rewatch it. I've got them all on DVD. Yeah, I still got DVD, but I can't stream it anywhere, so DVD.
I'll give you the Plex address.
I'm not. I got the disc, man. I'll throw them in. I know it's an inconvenience.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna. I'm only doing it for Night Court. I'm not watching anything else on there. She's even got a couple other things that I shouldn't mention, but yeah, I'm only doing it for Night Court.
You know, the federal government is going to come after your sister now, right? And it's all going to be your fault.
Because I'm going to tell you what. Facebook added podcasts to your podcast page. So if you find the Hollywood Outsider podcast around there, and you know there's some fact checking going to happen. Like there's going to be somebody, that's wrong, it's illegal, don't ever talk about that again. And then it's going to require your sister's address and name.
Well, I don't care.
Good for you. Good for you. That's the kind of brother you want to be. I've watched a couple things. One, I want to mention, I saw Escape Room, Tournament of Champions. It's very much the same movie as you saw the first time. It's just our 2 heroes from the last film are basically, they go to New York City and they're trying to find the company that's doing these crazy escape rooms. And they end up again in another escape room, only this time with previous people that have escaped somehow. And it gets amped up as it goes. It's actually really intense, even though the puzzles are kind of ridiculous in many spots. But there's some really cool ones. There's one in a bank where it involves like lasers and whatnot. And it's just a really cool puzzle. I still don't understand how they solved it. But, you know, this is one of those movies. It's kind of like Saw. You're just like, okay, yeah, fine. I don't care. But then there's like a twist in the second and the third act, right at the beginning of the third act or midway, that is horrible. It's just a really bad call. And the actor that is part of that twist is not a great actor in terms of that performance. I was really just disappointed completely. And so, I don't know. It really took a lot of the sting out of the movie. Like the movie was really firing, and then it just went like a balloon popped. It's still enjoyable enough, so it's entertaining enough. Rent it. I wouldn't go spend money at the theater for that one. Now, I'm also watching a show on Apple TV Plus. I'm actually watching Apple Plus, and it's not Ted Lasso because it's not. It'll be out soon, and when you're hearing this, it might already be out. But watch season 2 because Ted Lasso is great. It's called Truth Be Told. Have either of you seen this one?
No.
I have not.
It's Octavia Spencer is a true crime podcaster, right? Former journalist, now true crime podcaster, who put Aaron Paul's character in jail many years ago for murder. Like
bless her.
20 years ago for murder. And then comes to think, maybe he didn't do it. So she starts covering the case and trying to find out if he in fact killed somebody's father. And the somebody is played by Lizzie Kaplan, who plays the twins, who are the daughters of the murdered man. Very interesting stuff. There's a lot of good actors involved, and I'm halfway through it, so I don't know if it ends strong, but I will tell you it was much better than I thought it was going to be. But I also kind of, whenever somebody says Apple TV, I'm like, oh, okay. So I wasn't too excited to begin with, but especially after defending Jacob, because I'm still mad about how they ended defending Jacob. Great show, bad ending. Just a bad ending. Weak, wussy ending. The book, go read the book. So much better. This, I'm hoping, ends strong because it's the same kind of vibe. And I think they're coming back for season 2 for a new case. So should be good. There we go. Share your thoughts on this episode or anything else in our Facebook group, which is, again, The Hollywood Outsider. We're on Twitter at BuyPopcorn. And our site is thehollywoodoutsiders.com. Please rate and subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast app. You can find John's artwork on Insta and on Twitter at rjohndraws. You can find Troy Heinrichs, who isn't this week. He's not here, but he will be back next week, at Troy Heinrichs. And Amanda is on Veronica's Marshmallows and Smirk and at Sink Into This. I'm also on the Blacklist Exposed with Troy Heinrichs and Presenting Hitchcock and at Aaron Smirks on Twitter. Now we're going to wrap this up. We're going to play a little quick game. Not really a game, just more like a conversation piece. Let's see where this goes. John, any topic, up to you. What do you want to talk about?
Okay, so you know what? I've been paying attention to a little bit of what's going on out there in the world, and what I've been starting to notice a little bit more here and there is that there's some obvious drone footage being used in movies and television. Most notably that I can think of is the season finale of John Oliver's show, where they blew up the 2020 sign. Yeah. There was some drone footage used there. And like, how do you guys feel about this new access to a way of creating cost-effective filmmaking with this new technology? I
find that actually pretty fantastic, especially in independent film, because, big budget movies can afford helicopters and they can afford crane shots and they can afford a lot of that stuff. A lot of these independent guys, they have no money. But drone, what is it? I mean, you know a lot about drones. $400 or $500 you can get a decent camera and drone for. Maybe if you're gonna go with something on high end GoPro quality, like $400 or $500 you can do something pretty interesting. If you go something as far as, like, there's a lot of people who are doing these ads for restaurants and bowling alleys and bars where the drone is outside the bar and somebody opens the door and the drone flies into the bar, flies through the bar really slowly as people are enjoying themselves, and it creates this really immersive experience as to what the bar is like. Like, that's all drone footage, and what we're used to is seeing stuff like that done with more camera tricks and or CG, whereas this is actually something much cheaper and somebody's actually controlling that thing. And it looks great. And what I have found, and I noticed this a lot, especially when we did Sundance earlier this year and we did South by Southwest Film Festival in March, a lot of films are employing that process. Like, I saw so many really just beautiful overhead shots, vistas, wide landscapes, things that independent films never had before. They basically had static shots. It's just guy's face, guy standing next to the door. Like, that's basically what independent film was for a lot of years. You basically got a camera in a room and it's whatever they can shoot wherever that camera is placed, because they don't have money for a crane or a helicopter or anything else. Now they can do all that. So I'm seeing a lot of independent films are making strides with filmmaking that seems so much more expensive than it really is. It's really, really cheap for them to do. It's affordable, but they're getting gorgeous shots. I like a lot of just mountain-esque landscapes and terrain that you get a full scope of. I don't remember what the movie was, but I was watching one that was set in Florida and it had a beautiful drone shot where it went over the Everglades. And that was just a beautiful shot. And so many horror movies that are independent these days, they all have that overhead location shot. Like, they're going in the woods, you get that beautiful drone shot going over the car as it heads into the woods, or the car as it leaves the city, things like that. I mean, things that they can now get without having to spend a fortune. So many people can make the movies they always wanted to make. I think it's great.
Yeah.
For like a fraction of the cost of what the helicopter pilot and the helicopter and the fuel and all that, for a fraction of the cost, they can pay one drone pilot and get something gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great in terms of everything that Aaron just mentioned, the filmmaking technique and the ability to do more as a filmmaker. But I think the other cool piece of it is integrating drones as the antagonist in a lot of films. And it's an easy way to do that and to bring technology into your movies in that capacity that some films have used. You know, they have drone attacks in a mall, or they have a drone that, you know, is spying on someone who's, you know, it's almost like the purveyor in many ways. And that discomfort, the psychological horror of somebody peering in on you with a camera, a drone that you can barely hear, that's sitting outside your window. It's not even the person anymore. It's the technology piece. And we've become a society that, for a good reason, have become fearful of technology, because we know that potentially someone could be in and hacking our camera and looking at us, or we know that our technology is always listening to us. And so we have that innate fear. And so using drones as an antagonist in movies is also another really clever way to do it and reduce how many acting individuals you have.
All right. Well, that was an interesting topic. Thanks for bringing it up. Now go make a movie. You got a drone. You got several drones. Make a good movie.
I'm rebuilding one right now.
Can you rebuild one to make a movie?
Well, I'm rebuilding one so that it'll have HD capabilities. So not just the HD camera that's strapped to it, but I'll actually be able to see everything in HD.
Now, do you use that sometimes to spy on people? Like just zoom in right into their window, watch them?
Well, my drones are too loud to do that with.
That's the one thing I always wonder in movies. Whenever you see a drone in a movie, it's flying over somebody's head as they're on the pool or something like that. And I'm like, they don't hear that? Like what?
Yeah. Even at their quietest, it's like a swarm of angry bees.
Yeah. Trust me, you'll hear it. And if you don't, maybe get your ears checked. If you don't hear well, you're probably being spied on right now.
Right.
True story.
Agreed.
All right. Well, remember, the next time you head to a theater, buy popcorn, because we're out. And probably going to go get some medical attention for that sick burn on Amanda.
Yeah, somebody call the ambulance, because I'm hurt.
God, John, that was mean.
I know.
I'm sorry.
You take like a month off and you come back so vicious.
He's been watching a lot of Night Court, so he thinks he is Dan
There's
Fielding.
also that.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of Night Court, so.
He's such a good dick. Do you need to warm up or anything? Because I know it's been a while. Do you want to talk anything out? You want to you want us to tell you about our days? Do you care about what we've been doing?
I don't care at all.
Okay, so you're good to go.
So he's honest. Yeah, so we have Johnny back.
Okay, well then we'll hit it and quit it.
I like this whole hit it and quit it thing. It might be my whole new motto coming up.
Oh boy.
Jesus Christ. Let's go.
As long as it's not us. Don't leave us.
Aw, that's nice. I never beg anybody to stay. I just say, please don't go. Please don't go.
I kind of say,
That was dorky.
girl, don't go away mad.
Just
Girl,
go away.
just go away.
I like that song. It's Motley Crue. Back when Vince Neil could sing without, gaining weight. Sorry.
Are you trying to say that Vince Neil would like hit a high note and get fat all of a sudden?
Yeah, I think because a sandwich would go down his throat. I have weight problems. It's okay for me to make those jokes. I think that's the rule, right?